Live from the Now Media Newsroom.
We had in there mostly the John Rustad stuff, because yesterday he was refusing to step down, even though there was a letter from 20 members of his caucus saying, thanks for the work, but time to move on. And then they even appointed an interim leader, Trevor Halford, to take over for him. But John Rustad said, no way, Jose. There was quite a few pieces in there, and we're not going to play them now because it's not much point to it. Because he knew the writing was on the wall. They're basically the funding. When we interviewed Jonathan K2 and Mario Canseco, basically, I think Mario Canseco said it best. It was when he interviewed him saying that, they're really going to come down to the funding numbers. And it doesn't look like a lot of people are willing to fund John Rustad continuing as leader of the Conservative Party of BC. But let's Domtar. We're going to talk about that Domtar, that mill, that pulp mill. That's a real loss. That was a major, major loss. And again, the jobs that are there, those are good paying jobs. All these resource sector jobs are good paying jobs. And they basically fund the community. Those jobs, I've lived and worked in mines and mills, and those mines and mills are basically the lifeblood of a community. And that's what this is. It's a lifeblood of the community. And we're going to let's listen into a little bit of this Domtar interview here.
Vision, obviously, for Domtar. It is very, very bad news, not just for these families, but for our province. And the Minister of Forests, myself, the Minister of Labour, will be working together to do all we can.
Okay, so he's saying he's going to work to do all he can, but from what I'm hearing from you, there is more that could be done here.
Yeah, look, we've got a very good relationship with Premier Eby and with the government, and we're going to continue to work with them to find solutions here. That is our commitment. We've got 3 mills that remain in British Columbia, and we're going to work with this government to make sure that we can protect those workers and those jobs. There is a lot more to be done, though, to be clear, and we're going to need to work together with the province to find these solutions. We've proposed many of them, and we really do need the province to listen to those solutions and to implement them quickly. Things are dire in the forest sector in British Columbia. It is a crisis. They need to act now. They should amend the Forest Act in the next legislative session. Subsidies alone will not work for the sector. We need to make substantive change to the regulations and the hosting conditions in BC and focus on things that we can control. And if they are willing to do that, they've got a great active partner in Domtar.
Is that the primary issue here, a legislative or regulatory block?
It is primarily. That's within the purview of the BC government. They can control access to fiber supply in British Columbia, and that's the primary reason you're seeing these mills, including ours, go under. Markets fluctuate. We can't control that. We can't control what the United States is doing vis-a-vis tariffs, and we can't control what the federal government is doing either, frankly, but we can control in British Columbia what the hosting conditions are here in BC, and so we really ought to focus on that going forward.
And Chris, if the regs aren't changed, what does that mean for your 3 plants which remain?
Well, frankly, just like any other mill in British Columbia, those mills and those jobs will be in jeopardy if we don't see substantive change from the government. And so we'll have to work closely together to find those solutions. And that involves not just the government of BC, the federal government, local governments. I had the mayor of Port Alberni call today to try to avoid the same kind of thing that's happening in Crofton today. We also operate a mill in Port Alberni on Vancouver Island.
We've done so many forestry stories, interviewed so many people, including the then Forest Minister, Bruce Ralston of the NDP, Brenda Bailey, who was the Jobs and Innovation person at the time, and then Kevin Falcon and John
and the
Rustad.
Guy who's now Forest Minister, Bradley Palmer.
John Rustad, who had some experience with forestry as well and comes from that area where forestry is a big thing. It's been in shambles and in trouble for a long time, and this is one of the key things, is what he's saying here: access to fiber. Access to fiber. It's not Donald Trump. It's access to fiber. Our forestry industry I interviewed Kofi too, and Kofi said, 10,000 jobs lost in forestry. This is in 2 years. This is about a year ago now. Access to fiber. And I interviewed Premier Eby himself on it. Asked him about access to fiber. He says, yeah, we got problems. We got some issues that we got to work on. We're working on it. He even admitted to that. Yeah, where are we? And then they created a group to look at the problem. And what was the reaction from the industry? Not enough representation on there. So they got a bunch of people on there that are all environmental concerns, and nobody wants to talk about like what the industry needs. And then a lot of this goes into wildfire fighting too, because if you don't have a new forest regeneration, you have an old forest that is dry and brittle and ready to light on fire. Access to fiber. Over and over and over again. And all they want to do is straw man Trump, right?
The cynic in me can't help but point out that people that work in mill towns in BC don't tend to vote for the NDP, do they?
Yeah. And Eby finally admits that tree access contributing to the suffering of the forestry industry, but he won't budge on old growth. But he said he will be allowing old growth trees to, in part, access to lack of access, but he said he will not be allowing old growth trees to be harvested. It comes after 350 workers in Crofton were told they're losing their jobs due to the closure of the Domtar mill. If there's something else we can do, absolutely, but the idea we would pulp old growth in order to buy a little bit of time is not the solution we're looking for. I mean, it's access to fiber, and I've interviewed one of the executives from another mill. And he said that, like a lot of the people in Vancouver, the voting base there, believe that all the trees in BC are from Stanley Park. And they don't cut any of them down. It's a renewable resource. Forestry is a renewable resource.
That's at the heart of the controversy with this old growth classification, isn't it? That some of the trees that are classed as old growth are not, they're not like beautiful groves of hemlocks or whatever, or cedars. Like they're just pine, or they're not valuable. Not even the ecosystems are valuable. But yeah, it's age is apparently adequate as long as it's old, even if it's not particularly useful, doesn't support wildlife or anything like that. But if it's old, then we're going to protect it. And we've got a clip from Eby later on where he talks about that. He talks about the parks and things, and I don't think people understand. It's a bit like oil as well, isn't it? It's like,
let's play that clip before you go.
People have just made their mind up. They've been radicalized about it.
Yeah, let's play that clip.
Well, hi, Premier. I wanted to get your reaction. I guess a couple of things here. Can you let us know if you're going to be in Crofton for that meeting this afternoon? And I wanted to get your reaction, given that we've heard from the company and the industry that they're placing much of the blame for what's happened with this mill on your government, not Trump tariffs. We're weeks away from Christmas, 350 people out of a job. What's your message to those folks in that community?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. The meeting will be this afternoon in my office. I understand that the head of the union and the mayor are both here, and so we'll be meeting here, and I'm grateful for them coming here. We still have some votes, and we have our work to do here in the legislature. Otherwise, of course, I would be in Crofton. With respect to the reasons for the mill closure, I accept that there are key restrictions on harvesting old growth, cutting down old growth trees that have driven up the price and access to fiber on Vancouver Island. I believe this is a necessary decision. Pulping old growth is a temporary strategy at best, and we need a long-term strategy because that's the available, affordable fiber, as the industry calls it. They have to go further afield to get trees. Their transportation costs have gone up 40%. And that means that with very low pulp prices in Asia, combined with high costs of transportation for the trees that are available, the economics aren't working for the company, and I understand that. The other compounding factor that isn't unfortunately related to the Trump tariffs is that feedstock for these mills also, and it's not just this mill, but other mills in the province, comes from waste product from sawmills. And the sawmill waste product that feeds these pulp mills has been dramatically drawn down as well because these mills have laid off shifts. They have temporarily closed. because of the impact of, for example, for Canfor, a 46% tariff imposed by the Trump administration. And so these things are all connected. The forest industry is an ecosystem of its own, which is.
Just read between the lines.
Hey, you got to blame Trump again.
Yeah, and Asia. Asia also got blamed. But just read between the lines what EB says and also what Jolie says. But she's saying it about steel. He's saying it about lumber. He said, we need a long-term solution so that it's sustainable and blah, 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 blah. He's basically saying, yeah, you're all going to lose your jobs. And the lumber industry is going to be a tiny fraction of what it was when my party took power. However many years ago it was now, 2017 or whatever. That's what he's saying. And that's what Jolie's saying about steel. It's kind of, she's saying the jobs are going to go away, but you're still going to do other things that we consider to be, that align with our views on the environment or what the green revolution or whatever it is. But you're all going to lose your jobs. And many of you are going to lose your jobs. And we're going to sit here and say, oh damn, boo-hoo, what a shame. Moving on.
Well, you can also scream and say, I'm here for the jobs. We will stand with you. Stand with you. Stand with us at the grocery checkout counter and pay for the groceries. Stand there.
Jolie could certainly do that. She could pay for quite a lot of people's groceries, I'm sure.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.